Good morning and welcome to the fourth lecture of mine in the series of Karma and Science. In the earlier lectures, we discussed about the basic details of the nervous system, including the brain and sensations and perceptions. We learned about this marvelous system and organs intricacies and functioning. We also made you conversant with the process of sensations and the basic details of the primary sensory organs. In today's deliberation, I will take you along defining multiple facets of perceptions and correlating scientific knowledge with Jain philosophical understanding. As per the scientific belief, the essential component of consciousness are sensory perception, analysis, and storage of information, and to create an appropriate response. Unlike other features of consciousness, sensations are the most perceptible and have been extensively explored by the scientists. To fulfill the above aim, we shall walk along the following milestones. First, how do we make meaningful interpretations, whether it is instantaneous, inborn, or inbuilt? Then we will talk in short about the absolute and the different thresholds. Not all intensity of the stimulus create an impression in our mind. Subsequent to this, we will talk about the selection, organization, and interpretation of the perception. And the major portion of my talk will be devoted to correlation with Jain philosophy and scientific knowledge. As you visualize, there are large gray areas in knowledge regarding sensations and the perceptions in the animal kingdom and in humans. I will describe some of the areas where a meaningful dialogue can arrive between experts in Jain philosophy and neuroscientists. Coming to the sensations and the perception. We have talked about this topic in the previous lectures also. It is worth recapitulating for it to facilitate today's discussion. While sensations are a first person perceptions and is absolutely a private one. It's a process by which sensory receptors and the nervous system receive and represent stimulus energies from the environment. The brain receives these inputs from the sensory organs and analyzes them. In contrast, perception is referred to as the interpretation of a sensations. It's an objective in nature. It is process of organizing and interpreting sensory informations, enabling meaningful recognizing objects and the events. Thus, the brain makes sense of sensory input given by the sensory organs. To further enlighten you on the subject, particularly in relevance to the Jain philosophy, there is a general agreement between the science and the Jain philosophy that sensory knowledge is acquired through the sense organs, brain, and mind. It is also agreed that the human brain is the highest developed neural structures in the animal kingdom. However, when it comes to perception, there is a strong divergence. While structurally considered, perception is better understood by the science. Its philosophical interpretation is rich in Jain literature. In the course of deliberation, I will be touching on such points of similarities and the differences. Neuropsychologists have analyzed perception in great detail. They suggest that our sensations and the perceptual capabilities are either inborn or developed early in life. There is a little change in this capability later in life. Whatever the change we see are the results of modifying factors such as needs. Our requirements or desire is an important factor in the perception. Beliefs. Our beliefs, be they religious or be it societal, are a major issue in deciding perceptual differences or the preferences. Such beliefs may be a real one or an imaginary one. Emotions is a major determinant of our perception. Our perceptions will be different during anxiety, depression, anger, or happiness, or different emotional status. Our perception is also decided by what we wish to attain. Previous experiences of the failure, success, or any other decides how we are going to face a similar situation in the future. Cultural and social factors are also an important issue in perceptions. Mass perception is greatly influenced by the cultural, societal, and family environment and influences. Thus perception is not only a biological process, it is also influenced by environmental factors also. Our perception of the situation or the event is greatly influenced by how much we are attentive. Thus, it is a major determinant of our perception. With attention or with the focus, we not only sort and select some of the sensations, we neglect or discard the other situations. Some habitual situations become automatic and require few mental efforts or the little mental efforts. Sometimes they do become automatic. We are familiar with many situations where many objects or situations escape our perceptions, though physically they are there. Often we label them as absent-mindedness or inattention blindness. It's a common observation that we are choosy, having either selective attention or focus in our perception. Such perceptions where we effortlessly select the attention or put the attention into consideration, they are remembered for a long time. To conclude, perceptions is largely influenced by the attention and the preferences as shown in this slide. Not only attention, but physical states and the emotions also influences the perception. Likely results of effort and motivation is also strong influencer of perception. Some examples are when we are tired or alone, our destination often appears with the perceptual requirement of a large amount of energy and we fatigue very easily. Similarly, with a heavy backpack or when we are contemplating unaccustomed jobs, they often appear difficult and requires a stronger willpower to complete them. In contrast, jobs with interest, enthusiasm, and expectations are where perceptions of the situation is entirely different. Something you desire always looks closer and achievable. Another important point in the perception is it is the mind which decides the perception. Perception is organized by meanings that mind imposes on it. There are four things and the mind chooses only one which it suits. So we perceive the world not as it is, but as it is useful to us. Philosophically, this is the major reason for our perceptual ill or wrong perceptions. Meditation is also to advised to curb this tendency and prejudiceness and going into the observing the situation as it is. Having talked to you on some of the intricacies of the perceptions, we now move on to some of the observations which science have made invariance with the philosophy. Most public perceptions and religious philosophy concerning sensations are obsessed with the five indriyas, popularly known as Panchendriya. They are eye or visual, ear or hearing, smell or olfactory, taste, gustatory, and somatosensory, equivalent to the touch. However, modern science has recognized two additional primary sensory modalities which have not found any place in the religious descriptions. They are kinesthetic sense, which gives us the sense of position and motion, uh, and the vestibular sense. Perception or receptors are in the vestibular organs, and it gives us the sense of balance. With scientific progress, we are learning about more sensations which have not been described earlier. The examples are visceral senses. We have talked in the last lecture in detail. The sensations from the various viscera, be it cardiac, gastrointestinal, lungs, or the renal. Then electromagnetic waves, they have been recognized as one of the important one to guide the motions in the birds. Similarly, the sense of speech or thoughts, face and mind reading, they are also been described but have not found any place in the philosophical literature. The reasons for not acknowledging and elaborating on sensations beyond the five external sensations and philosophical literature is a subject of research. Possibly, the philosophers have concentrated on the external or appeared sensations rather than the real sensations which are there in the human body. Some of the basic sensations, such as that of touch, taste, smell, vision, and hearing, are present in different animals with greater precision and intensity. This is perhaps related to their environmental and survival needs. The phrase eagle's eye, or Grand Shakti, or the sensory or the hearing faculty in the canines is one of the things common in the public perception. Ancient texts have scant references to the spatial sensory organs and perceptions in animals, such as sensations of the electroception, echolocation, infrared radiations, ultraviolet and polarized light, hygrosensation. So the sensations of the humidity in the environment is one of the things which these animals, they recognize the weather changes. Similarly, the sense of speech, highest developed in the humans, is one of the uh, great asset bestowed us. Even if you look into the adjacent diagram, the large area named the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area is devoted to the speech. Similarly, the sense of thought, not localized to any particular area in the brain, but it is diffusely located, and this sense of thought or the mind is one of the important assets to us. Similarly, the chronoreceptions or the sense of time, considered to be located in the pineal gland, is one of the things which is there not only in animals but in humans as well. Magnetoreception are going or walking as per the Earth's magnetic field and aligning it. The many fishes and the avians or the birds, they use this faculty for their navigation. Neuropsychologists have discovered many more spatial sensations. Though these processes have been described in philosophical literature, they have not been classified as part of sensory appreciation or indriyas. Collaborative research is needed to unfold unfold these queries. Another area where science can supplement the philosophical knowledge is related to the matter or Pudgal. As per Jain philosophy, Pudgal has five colors, five taste, two smells, and eight touch. However, we know that there are more colors than the five in the nature. Similarly, taste, though currently we have described the five tastes, but there are many more to come. Similarly, the smell, the innumerable type of smells. Thus, such assertion can be either confirmed or can be modified with the strong neuroscientific evidence investigations are available, and philosophers should collaborate with the scientists to confirm all these information. Now I will take you along some of the physiological principles related to the sensations, which are essential to understand the further discussion on the subject. One of them is hierarchical processing. All sensations involve both cortical and subcortical processes, though they are perceived in the periphery at the sensory receptors. In higher animals, including humans, there are two relay stations before these signals reach the brain. A complex interaction occurs at each relay station. The cortical analysis is thought to be linked with the conscious experience, and the subcortical analysis is thought to be involved in unconscious events. However, not all sensory tracts follow the same design. The complex interaction which occurs at each relay station is often manipulated or modified with the experiences, emotions, and other inputs from the sensations. Another important principle is the sensory adaptation. We are very well aware that if a stimulus is given repeatedly or constantly, its sensitivity or our responses to that stimulus decreases. But however, important point is this is quickly restored with the cessation of the stimulus, and the person gets back to the original level of the sensory stimulation. Few more physiological principles. Selectivity. All sensory receptors, though they follow general principles of responding to a stimulus, they are specific to a particular sensory modality. Example, a touch receptor will not be holding true for regulation of the taste. Topographical representation is one of the important arrangement in the brain, that the sensory stimulus which we get from the periphery, whether through the visual cortex or visual informations from the retina or sensory cortex from the skin, there is a map which we have already described earlier in the slides, is that homunculus. So each one has got a specific arrangement within the brain. The plasticity. The sensory neuronal plasticity refers to the modulation of the functioning of a neuron to the change environmental function. It aims at optimizing the functions with the change in role or in their immediate environment. Another important principle related to the sensations is the threshold. A minimum intensity of stimulus is needed to detect the impulse. Below this threshold, the stimulus is called subliminal and may not excite any informations. While the stimulus, which can a minimal intensity of the stimulus, which can excite informations or a response, is called absolute threshold. Another term is difference in the threshold or difference threshold. Just noticeable difference, J and T. It is the minimal difference between the two stimuli for 50% detection. That's the one. The importance of threshold lies in the sensory world of it defines the sensory worlds of the humans and the animals. However, it is not a uh, fixed reading. It depends on the alertness, interest, and past experiences. And it is not similar across all the species. It is different in the animals and then from each others also. One important point is that the subliminal stimulus, though they don't excite any obvious response, but they are also recorded. And it is possible that the subliminal response stimulus will excite a response in the subconscious or unconscious state and will be recorded within the brain. The basic sensory modalities, be it touch, smell, vision, hearing, and so on, they are not a single one. Public perception and most of the philosophies recognize this as a common one, as a single one. However, science has gone much beyond that one. And time doesn't permit me to touch or say deal with all the sensations. For example, I'll take touch, and there are many subdivisions within the touch also. The two major subtypes are either precise or non-specific. Precise information is consists of fine touch, vibration, kinesthesia, proprioception. First, and it's not only they are different. Their pathway within the spinal cord and to the brain is different. Uh, these these are precise information. They relay in the first their transactions or the transition occurs in the dorsal root ganglion, which is located outside the cord, just near to it. Another important subdivision is the non-specific information, which has got many other types of the sensations, just as non-localizing, pain, pressure, temperature, and crude touch. These fibers, they not only ascends after crossing to the opposite side, in contrast to the precise information which ascends on the same side and crosses in the medulla oblongata. And they cross and have their first relay station within the cord itself. Thus, there is quite difference between the two, and we will further see in the tracks in the next slide. From the sensory receptors, information is conveyed to the cortical and subcortical structures in the brain through a network of fibers known as sensory tracts. Such tracts are stimulus specific and also terminate or synapse with a specific type of neurons. Thus, these tracts are specific. During the development, gene interacts with the environmental factors to create a network of neurons and tracts that receives and transmit information in form of electrical signals. Though all sense organs on a stimulus generate similar electrical signals, the perception they create is diverse and specific. This is explained on the basis of their destination in the cortical and the subcortical structures. Most of the sensory tracts have two relay stations, means that there are three order neurons before they finally terminate in the brain. At each relay station or synapse, the relevant sensory stimulus is either dilated, modulated, or exaggerated, or increased in their intensity before they passes on to the higher up. A subliminal response can also be generated at these relay stations. While first order neuron transmits the signals to the spinal cord or to the brainstem, the second order neuron conveys it to the thalamus. The third or final order neurons carry the impulses from thalamus to a specific area of the sensory cortex to convey sensory perceptions to virtual reality. But for the olfactory system, All sensory impulses are routed through the thalamus. However, not all sensory tracts also follow the same design, and there are few exceptions. For sensations below the neck, information reaches the opposite side, the contralateral side, and sensation carried by cranial nerves are usually conveyed onto the same side or ipsilateral side of the sensory cortex. Not all information from these receptors reaches the conscious awareness. While we are inferior in primary sensory perception to many species in the animal kingdom, we are best in the discriminative ability which lies in the second and third order neurons and their interactions in the cerebral cortex. Thus, humans are superior in the discriminative sensations or discriminative ability in sensory perceptions. The sensory stimulus may not reach to conscious awareness as it can either be subliminal or the person is in low vigilance state such as sleep, anesthesia, or preoccupied with other sensory interactions. In addition, a large number of ascending tracts operates at subconscious or unconscious level, example being spinocerebellar tract, spinoreticular tract, autonomic nervous system, afferent and visceral sensory fibers. How these multisensory signals are combined to form judgment and consciousness is a subject of research by the neuroscientists. Some of the areas that are to be explained or they have to be explored further are reasons and requirement of creating two relay stations in the sensory tracts and their evolutionary significance. Another is reason for crossing the fibers to the opposite side and that of head and face to the same side in the cerebral cortex. What is their evolutionary significance? There are many more unsolved questions we will be trying to do in the future research. Now, I am briefly describing the informations, how it is being processed within the brain. Two important processes or the process which have been recognized in this process, they are either bottom-up processing or the top-down processing. There are two different ways of making sense of a stimuli. In bottom-up processing, we allow the stimulus itself to shape our perceptions. Example being analysis of the stimulus begins at the receptors and works up to the level of brain and mind. Thus, we go from a specific to a general impression in the brain later on. In top-down processing, we use our background knowledge and expectations to interpret what we see or observe. Such perceptions are heavily influenced by our expectations and the prior knowledge. In simple words, the brain applies what it knows to fill the blanks and anticipate what next. It applies to all type of sensations, be it touch, taste, smell, vision or hearing. Each approach can be quite simple. The top-down approach goes from general to the specific, and the bottom-up approach begins at the specific and moves to the general. I move now to a common observations of all of us, which the neuropsychologists have systematically synthesized into the two types. Our perceptions are of two types, either stereotyped or the automatic, or we gain new experiences or the conscious perceptions. Stereotyped, also called automatic perception, is based on previously learned responses or the behavior. This is a quick set of responses, and fMRI has identified that major activity during this response occurs in the posterior or the back area of the brain. In contrast, the new experiences or the conscious perception involves experiences gained with the new sensations, sensory appreciations On repeated repetitions, these experiences may turn into the automatic behavior. fMRI has identified major activity in new experiences in the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe of the brain. It is to be recognized that both these perceptions they can occur either at awake or attentive state or at unconscious or subconscious levels. The important point to note is that we are born with a large set of automated behavior. We do the many jobs unknowingly or unconsciously. We keep on adding these automated behavior as we experience or as we mature. In our lifetime, there is large set of behavior develops. Sometimes we become rigid on that. A big question whether automated behavior at birth is from the what is the source of that automated behavior at birth is not known. While philosophy puts it related to the previous birth, science is yet to explore it. I feel the genetic and epigenetic studies will be able to unfold this particular mystery. Each sensory fibers and the sensory receptors have a separate pathway, and each one of them make different observations. However, a quick integration of all of them in the brain is quite strong. It is quick, non-failure, and meaningful. Our interpretation of the self and that of the external world are expressed in a holistic way with meaningful multimodal perceptual experiences. This is an essential step to having metaphysical consciousness. How these multisensory signals are combined to form judgment and consciousness is a subject of research for neuroscientists. There are multiple unresolved issues such as the relevance of discriminative sensations, interaction of emotional and social factors with the perception, processing of thoughts in the mind, role of primary, secondary, and association cortices. The neocortex is the largest and most powerful area in the brain. This brain has got a network of association cortices and analyze each integrated information based on earlier beliefs and experiences. They are primary cerebral cortical regions for interpretation of sensory signals for touch, temperature, hearing, vision, smell, etc. Adjacent to the primary cortical areas, there are multiple secondary cortical areas. And in addition, there are large association areas which has interconnecting fibers between various sensory areas and with the area subserving memory, emotions, social, and higher cognitive functions. Thus, information gained with one sense has the potential to influence the perception obtained from the other senses. Multisensory interaction with emotional and social modulation of perception is an asset bestowed on humans. fMRI has shown increased activity in presence of subconscious perceptions or in the presence of subliminal stimulus in the putamen, interparietal circles, insula, and the inferior frontal gyrus of the brain. Our real-world experience is most often multimodal, involving the combination of sensation and perception into one experience. However, mechanism by which they are combined to form metacognitive judgment is still elusive. Sensations are linked with memory and allow recognition and appreciation of their significance. Ancient Zen literature classifies plants and animals based on number of sensory organs they possess. Example being one sense or the ekindrias who are blessed with the touch. When taste is added, it is the dvendriya. Further to that, if smell is added, it is 3 Indriyas. And in Chatundriya, vision is also added to about 3. And Panchendriya, the highest development so far known, when they are having the hearing in addition. This hierarchical development of sensory organs with the development of animal species and of the nervous system has many similarities in scientific and philosophical literature. It is suggested that philosophers can enrich themselves with the vast knowledge available with science, particularly regarding number of sensory organs, presence of sensory tracts, relay of such information at peripherally located ganglia, then to the cortical and the subcortical processing in the brain. They can thus revise and update the classification of animal kingdom by collaborating with neuroscientists. For example, plants, though they are labeled with no sense organs, we do know that they do possess a rudimentary sense organs, particularly regarding touch. Many plants, particularly their leaves, they respond to the touch. Similarly, plants bloom better or flower better in presence of good music and good environment. The brain and the nervous system is a highly intricate, highly developed, and most studied organ in the human body. A significant gap continues between the science, that's the physical phenomena, to our personal experience or the philosophy. It appears that perhaps consciousness has not been elucidated or elaborated by the science so far very well. Conscious perception involves object, sense and complex processes, which involves primary cortices, association areas or cortices, and reciprocal connections with the memory stores. In spite of many divergent views on the sense, sensory organs and the perception, there is a many meeting points as we have outlined in today's lecture. Such divergent view can be a stimulus to philosophers and to scientists to solve mysteries and come out with a simple but logical conclusion. Scientists and philosophers working together can unfold such and many more mysteries. The sensation is an important link with our perceptions and the consciousness. And this is a topic which should be studied by both the faculties in detail. Ladies and gentlemen, you must have enjoyed the 4 talks which we have done mainly on the structural aspect of the brain and the nervous system and their functioning. Now we have also talked about how the sensations and perceptions are structured and how they work within the brain and in the body. Thanks a lot for sharing my dialogue on one of this important topic. I enjoyed the most. Thank you very much. Having loaded you with a large amount of information, it's now your turn to dissect the subject with queries which I may be able to answer. Once again, thank you.